With the release of his new film, The Visit, I decided to take a look at the career trajectory of M. Night Shylaman and see how he got to this point. I want to look at his strengths and weaknesses, his rise, his fall, and possible redemption. Is he just a one-hit wonder? An inconsistent filmmaker? Is he a good filmmaker? Or was he ever any good? People may have forgotten about it, but about 15 years ago, he was the newest phenomenon. A certain reputable magazine even pegged him as the next Spielberg. That may seem hilarious now, but after The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs, it was hard to deny it. So what went wrong? I believe in order to find out, we'll need to go through all of his films. But I'll try to be brief. M. Night Shyamalan's first film isn't The Sixth Sense. It's actually Praying with Anger. And looking at it, you start to see themes that pop up later into his films, such as the difficult relationship between fathers and sons. The main character is searching for purpose, and in the early films, that purpose was in religion. Of course, there are horror elements in most of his films, but from what I've noticed, that's not what typically those films are about. In Wide Awake, there's an uncomfortable relationship between the father and son. The son has to go on a personal journey and questions about the existence of God. The Sixth Sense is about acceptance of your situation, completing a goal despite the situation that you're in, and then moving on. Unbreakable, about the difficulty of a father and son. Also, the erosion of a marriage. David has lost meaning in his life, his marriage, his own goals. As with every film he's done, the lead character has a journey and becomes what they were meant to become. In this case, David becomes a superhero. And in Signs, once again, it appears to be a horror film, an alien abduction or invasion type film. However, it's also about a personal journey and the journey of a broken family and coming together, and the main character and regaining their faith back. And it's with these films where you notice he has a very strong visual and verbal exposition sense. In his best films, his films don't cheat. All the answers that you have are answered, either on screen or with various bits of dialogue that are called back later on. Let's take Signs, for instance. Everyone has the problem with like why the aliens are there, the whole water thing, why they didn't take the dog to a veterinarian instead of a human doctor. Watch the film again and look at every scene, and you'll notice your answers will be answered. Also, if you don't believe me, check out Chris Stuckman. He analyzed The Sixth Sense, and I think you may be looking at it with a different eye once you see his video. If there's one thing I could say even about his worst films, he has the ability to set a particular mood and tone with his films. Now, the latter part of his career, the film's quality doesn't equal to the tone he initially sets, but he is good at least doing that. Here's something that I don't feel a lot of people really point out. His ability to direct children. I mean, think about it. Think about the roles in his films by children up to that point. Unbreakable, The Sixth Sense, Wide Awake. He has an ability to get great performances out of children. This, however, started to dissipate right after Signs, however. Here's another factor in his films, and even in his bad films. James Newton Howard scoring each film since The Sixth Sense. His scores also set the tone of the film, even if the films aren't any good. Think about the foreboding mood that they set in Signs and The Sixth Sense. Think about that moment of pure joy in Unbreakable when finally David becomes what he was always meant to be. Unfortunately, James Newton Howard won't be scoring The Visit, but that's because it's a found footage film, and found footage films don't have scores. And here's a strength I don't think people really talk about. His versatility, the variety of his films. While most of his films are on the surface horror or supernatural, once you watch them, they really aren't that. The Sixth Sense, yes, is a ghost story. Unbreakable is a deconstruction of the superhero genre. Yes, it is as if Clark Kent late in life discovers that he's Superman. Actually, this is probably the closest we'll ever get to a live-action Miracle Man movie. The Village is a love story, not a horror story. Lady in the Water is a fairy tale or a fable. And as you can see, that's pretty diverse. That being said, his weaknesses really pop up in his latter half of his catalog. I believe one of his weaknesses is he's unable to really direct women well since Signs. Women tend not to have a really big role before then, but after that, they have a larger role, but they're not that interesting. I mean, take a look at The Village and Lady in the Water. I really didn't like the performance, and some of the writing seemed stiff, but some of this might also have to do with the actress Bryce Dallas Howard. I'm neither here nor there about her. She just really never gives me a positive or negative impression. And then there's Zooey Deschanel. She was miscast and she was horrible in The Happening, but then again, The Happening was horrible. This next issue really doesn't have anything to do with him. Unreal Expectations. Since The Sixth Sense, everyone compares every movie he does to The Sixth Sense. If you don't do that with other directors and their later films, then you shouldn't really do it to him. I mean, is Jurassic Park the same movie as Schindler's List? No, it's not. So when you look at Unbreakable, you shouldn't compare it to The Sixth Sense. Is it a good movie? Is it not a good movie? That's how you should judge it. You shouldn't say, well, it's not The Sixth Sense, so there you go. No. The twist. Every film that he does seems to have a twist. I don't think that was the original intention. I think the twist was only supposed to be for like The Sixth Sense, but since then, the audience keeps expecting a twist, and he unfortunately obliges. I feel that this hurts every one of his future films because it paints him into a corner narratively. He has to come up with something different every time, and it's never going to be as good as you want it to be. Another major issue with his films, at least a couple of them, are mismarketing. Like I said earlier, Unbreakable was built as a supernatural mystery, and it's not. It's a superhero film. The Village was built as a horror story. It's not. It's a love story. And you remember what I said about Lady in the Water? It's a fairy tale. It's not really a horror story, even though in fairy tales and fables there are elements of horror. But when it comes to weaknesses, it all leads up to this. His biggest weakness is himself. Hubris. I get the feeling that at some point, probably after Science, he felt he couldn't be touched. That he really was the next Spielberg. That he was the smartest person in the room. And this led to not as much attention to detail or focus as before. Now, I can only base what I'm about to say on rumor, but apparently after the success he had with his first 3 films, well, major hits, he had an inability or unwillingness to want to self-edit himself. He would put everything in his film. Take a look at The Last Airbender. I'm gonna go into The Last Airbender in another video more in depth, but the problem with The Last Airbender isn't the fact that he didn't try or he didn't care about the material, because I remember in a DVD extra in the last season of The Last Airbender, he said that the show was his and his children's favorite show. The problem is he tried to adapt an entire season into 2 hours. He tried to put everything that was in 20 episodes into 2 hours, and that wasn't gonna work. Plus, he whitewashed the main characters, but then changed the race of the minor characters. Plus, there wasn't as much attention to detail. The world looked dreary. It didn't look exciting or fun. Also, the special effects in his previous films, they look real, they look organic. And here, they look lazy and half-assed. The way he showed off the powers, the way the powers were in The Last Airbender, if you didn't have any powers, you'd be on the same level as someone that didn't have any powers. There was no benefit to having any of the bending powers. Well, moving on to his other films, a big problem was with the script. There was too much on-the-nose dialogue. There was exposition, but was incredibly blunt. I mean, it's as if he didn't pay attention to what he did in the earlier films. It's like he didn't trust or respect the audience that he was making films for anymore. And the worst part of this is, as long as his films were successful, no one from the film studio probably felt they had the cachet to call him out on any of his BS filmmaking. Because allegedly some studio producers have told him in the past, you probably shouldn't do this, you probably shouldn't do that, and he apparently threw up his arms and walked off. He needed to be humbled. And that started to happen with Lady in the Water. It was a bomb. It cost $73 million and it only took $70 million worldwide. The Happening did make money, however, critics and the film goers hated it. Then came The Last Airbender. Depending who you talk to, it either bombed or it just broke even or made a little bit of profit. But I'll go into that in another video. The Last Airbender wrecked his reputation. It wrecked it so much that when he directed After Earth, the film studio didn't even bother saying that this was an M. Night Shylaman movie. They tried to hide it. And when After Earth bombed, it looked like his career might be over. But then something happened. It appears that he realized his issues and his flaws, and he decided to go small. First thing he did was he co-produced and he directed the pilot to the limited Fox series Wayward Pines. And apparently it was so successful that Fox is trying to see about renewing it for next summer. And the next thing he did was he just directed a film called The Visit. It's a horror film and it's a found footage film. And just because of that, it's going to be a financial success because no found footage film has ever bombed. But from what I heard, it seems to be a return to form and a really good and funny and scary film. And his next film after this, he's teaming up with Joaquin Phoenix for a Blumhouse horror film, which should be very interesting. So it seems despite everything that's happened to him over the last 5 or 7 years, it looks like he is on his way on making a comeback. I doubt he will ever be as big as he was after The Sixth Sense, but maybe he doesn't have to. All he needs is to get back respect from the film going public and the critics. And that might be happening sooner than you think. And that's all I have for right now. Please comment below on how you like this or if you didn't like it. If you enjoyed this video, then please click like and subscribe to my YouTube channels. And until my next video, goodbye.